I would like to thank you all for coming tonight. I want to say thanks for every one of the master recyclers in this room who came tonight and came from some places far away, and brought friends. And I'd like to also thank Soha Badii. Did I say that right? Close enough. From CCTV, who's going to film this tonight, and it's going to run. And tomorrow, I'll send you the times that it will show up, so you can go back and show it to your friends, or for all you guys, you could see, how did I do? And a special thanks to these guys down here who, just like you, at one time had to do a presentation in class. You remember the end of the Master Recycler program? You did some sort of presentation. So they did a presentation. So that's why they're here tonight. And I'll get back to that. And this is our first ever CCTV. Not right now, Judy. I'm not doing questions. Okay, can we get to that later? Okay, thanks. This is a Beyond Recycling is a new endeavor. It's a training event for our master recyclers. It's fashioned somewhat loosely on the idea of the TED Talks that you've heard about, and maybe you've seen some of the TEDx talks here in Salem. The idea is that we're going to keep you abreast of new changes and evolving ideas and systems that are going on out there. And of course, this is a great opportunity for some of you who don't know that much about the Master Recycler class because you're visiting, or you're up there watching on CCTV tonight or today or this morning, whenever it runs. And the Master Recyclers program is run by Marion County Environmental Services. It teaches folks all about the solid waste system in Marion County. It's a very unique system. And it goes beyond just it starts thinking about what's the stuff that we put out in our street, our curbside, and you think about all those potential places there. You've got a garbage can, you've got a mixed recycling bin, maybe you've got a organics cart or a yard debris cart, maybe, or you've got another little bin where you can put oddball things, maybe. I say maybes because not everybody in the county has all 4 of those. You might only have 2 of those. You might have 1 of those. You might have none of those, okay? And then there's also the folks that are working in industry. Their stuff goes elsewhere, and it goes to different places. And it's also, how does it all work? How does it all fit together? And of course, we go on these cool field trips. It is a 7-week class that goes on one night a week, usually a Thursday, and there's a couple of Saturday field trips, which are, how cool, you guys? Very cool. I think that the field trips are usually the top part about this whole program. And of course, it's taught by professionals in the industry, so it's pretty good stuff. So again, thinking about that, so what do we do this for? The county does it out of the goodness of their heart, but it's mainly that goodness of their heart. There's always a subtle reason. And that subtle reason is we want to educate folks who become our eyes and ears and the mouthpiece of solid waste systems out throughout the county, because there's 3 waste reduction coordinators in Marion County. That's not enough. We need hundreds and thousands of you. And so that's what's been just such an amazing thing, because you do these you get this 30 hours of training or more, and then you give us 30 hours of payback, ideally. And so we think about how much payback that it's added up to. I mean, we're beginning our 26th year of Master Recycler program. It started in 1994. We've had 35 classes. Over 800 people have gone through the entire program. Some of them still owe hours. But we've accrued, that we know of, prior to the conversion from WordPerfect to Microsoft Word, we've got at least 11,000 hours documented of all that time. So that's several FTE full-time working for Marion County, doing all the stuff that I do and everybody else that does, and more the message that you've done when you went out there into those areas and done these things. So we appreciate that, and we hope you enjoy it, and I hope that you can continue getting these trainings to be caught up on stuff. And so when we get into the Beyond Recycling, our training for Master Recyclers tonight, of course we want to start off by remembering the 3 R's. Let's hear the 3 R's. They are? Reduce, reuse, recycle. Okay, reduce, reuse, recycle. And if you've come tonight to learn about recycling, the least of the 3 R's, you're going to be somewhat disappointed, because tonight we're really going to be looking at those first 2, the reduce, reuse piece, because as good as recycling is, it's not going to get us there. And when I say get us there, I'm talking about it's not going to get us there as far as eliminating all the waste that's coming our way. It's not going to get us there by reducing enough greenhouse gases. It's not going to help us save energy. It's not going to help us save landfill space. It's just not the answer. We've got to look at those other 2 R's. And that's why I've chosen these folk down here tonight to help us think about those things that will push us beyond those 3 R's. And I say there's 5 of them down here. 4 of them are going to present, but there was a pair that worked, and it wasn't until the last second that they were going to do a tag team. But you know, when you do that stuff, and there's, you know, you got there's a tag team match, and there's wrestling going on, and there's one stuck in the corner, and he's got to touch the other partner, and it's going to take too long to get there. Otherwise, well, they don't really do that in Master Recycler classes. But anyway, they decided to go with 1. So I thank them all for doing that. So we're going to start tonight, and I'm going to introduce them in the order that they're going to be up here. And we're just going to go through it. We're going to go through all 4 of them, all the 4 of the presentations. We're going to start off with Kate White. She's going to talk about embracing the circular economy. Then Debbie and Jim Miller's piece will be on a Master Recycler view of how chemistry and microbiology impact our waste. Tricia Harris will be talking about the repurpose, reuse, and art of saving all the pieces. And Brother Cyril, you know, he's so into waste reduction that he hardly has any vowels in his last name. So he's an amazing person. And maybe when he comes up, I'll let him pronounce his last name. He's going to talk about everything is connected, an ethical guide for Master Recyclers. And each speaker will have 15 minutes. I've asked them to save at least a couple of minutes towards the end to take questions. If there are more questions to go beyond that 15 minutes, just hold it. When we get through, we'll have a few more minutes. If you still think that you need to get that question in, we'll get those answered at the very end. And we'll have a little time for Q&A then. And I've got some raffle stuff at the end. But you have to, for those of you who are here, you have to be here to win some of it. So anyway, let's start with Kate White, who's going to come and talk about the circular economy.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here tonight.
How excited are you?
I'm pretty darn excited.
And I'm going to be
Okay, great. I'll need you. So yeah, I'm Kate, and some of you might have known me as the crazy cheese lady back in the day. I owned a sustainable, small, locally sourced organic creamery, and I named it Full Circle Creamery. At the time, I didn't know anything about circular economy. I just really wanted to do my best to minimize my waste and my impact on the environment to create a healthy food for the local community. Since then, I've been doing more service entrepreneurship. I really enjoy service. This is my newest business. It's called Glam Garage. And because I like to keep materials in use, when we closed the creamery down, I took all the cleaning supplies and opened up a housekeeping, organizing business. And what I found was people have a lot of stuff in their garages, and it takes up a lot of space. So I came up with the idea to just start organizing people's garages and keeping those materials in use so that we can just reclaim that space. People are more satisfied with their space, more satisfied with their stuff, and it eventually, my hope is to curb consumerism, that reduce aspect of the reduce, reuse, recycle. So that's what I do. And So today we're going to talk about circular economy. We're going to talk about what it is, why it's important, how we measure success, and then we're also going to have some fun talking about the different kinds of businesses and opportunities that are out there. So in circular economy business modeling, it's a closed loop system of materials. We're used to the linear economy model where we extract stuff, resources, out of the natural environment, like petroleum or wood, and then we use those materials to make stuff. Then we sell the stuff, use the stuff, and throw away the stuff. So it's more linear. The stuff ends up back in the environment, either in the landfill or as pollution. But the circular economy is different in that we take materials that are already in use and we keep them in use. So we make durable goods. We, fix them up, use them and fix them again, and then repurpose them, and then upcycle them, and then at the very end, we have these materials that are just used as much as we can, and then we redesign them and keep them in use. So that's the idea. It's a closed loop. Now, why is it important? Well, it minimizes our impact on the environment. We're not pulling so much out of the environment from our natural resources, and we're not putting stuff back into the environment as pollution. So in the circular economy, we measure success differently than we're used to. In our old paradigm, we would just measure success by how much profit we make. But there are other aspects that are really important, like the planet and people. So the planet refers to our environmental impact on the environment, and then the people is the social impact on the environment. So if we are creating or maintaining a clean environment, and we're also contributing to the welfare of society, and we're making money, which is very important, or otherwise we can't stay in business. If we can do those three things, then we do really have something great. So that's how we measure success. And there are a lot of opportunities in the circular economy. I have more success in service. So that's kind of more what I talk about. I love service because it's simple. I can be owner and proprietor and keep track of all my expenses with a piece of paper and a pencil. Usually a lot of times there's a low capital investment. You don't need a lot to get started. You can have some really high profit margins because your expenses are quite low. And at the end of the day, you've just helped people. A lot of my clients are older adults or working professionals that either don't have the time or the ability to do the things that I do for them. And so that brings me a lot of joy. The service sector is on the rise. The trends are showing that services are much needed, and there's all kinds of different services. So I've brainstormed here about some services. I don't know, do you guys have any ideas about different opportunities that could be out there for a service business? Anyone want to contribute their idea? Yeah?
Set some things to enable people to recycle.
Say that again?
Custom equipment, containers, size for people's recycle needs.
Okay.
You go into a home and you set people up.
Setting up homes with their recycling, and with our knowledge of materials management, we're able to help people with their recycling needs, setting up their systems in their homes. Yeah, that's part of what I do, and that is a big benefit to people, because a lot of people really want to recycle, right? But they don't know how, and so that's a great opportunity. If you're good at fixing something, like some people are good at fixing everything. Some people are good at fixing just certain things. They kind of specialize. That's a great way to have a business. Any kind of business actually can be more and more sustainable, and kind of you can tweak it to go from linear to circular depending on how you manage your materials. Transportation, maintenance, cleaning, anything that keeps materials in use. And also, as a user, you can participate in the circular economy by making sure that the items that you purchase and that are, made from like recycled materials, and that you keep those items in use, and when you're done with them, you are very mindful about where they go. So today we've talked about circular economy, and how it's a closed loop system of materials, and we've talked about the triple bottom line, the profits, people, and planet to measure success. We've talked about some different ideas of things we can do to have a service business in the circular economy. And so what I'd like you to join me in envisioning a future where materials are valued and they're kept in use for a longer period of time, and so that we are minimizing our impact on the environment, our negative impact on the environment, so that we can preserve our beautiful planet for generations to come. Does anybody have any questions for me? How much time do we have? Oh, I've only used 8 minutes? Wow, I just zoomed right through that, didn't I?
So I do have a question.
Yeah,
So I'm reading this book called Secondhand,
Uh-huh.
and in it discusses a huge need these days when people suddenly need to, say they're transitioning from a household stuff to suddenly they're going into a nursing home or assisted care, or they're going to move in with a family member, or maybe they die. And they've got all this stuff left, and they need to downsize quickly. Is that what do you help with that kind of stuff too?
Yeah. Right now I have a home. I worked for a client of mine for about 4 years, and an older adult, and she declined and recently passed. So I'm continuing the work with her family. So this summer we had a garage sale. She'd really wanted to have a garage sale. And so we mindfully went through everything in her garage and had a sale, and it was really wonderful to connect materials with the next user. It was really a very rewarding experience that we got to have together. And then as she declined this fall, I was able to use her garage to stage sorting through all the things she'd gathered in her 85 years on this planet. And so I've been sorting through that, and we're having the family go through everything. And then once that's done, we're having an estate sale. I've been calling around, finding, out what the warming shelters need as far as, warm things, pillows, blankets, hats, mittens, things like that. The senior center has taken a lot of things that older adults need. They kind of have a library at the senior center, so we've been able to take walkers and things like that to the senior center for them to keep in use, that people can just check out. So anytime I find a collection of things, I work to find a good place for it to go to keep it in use, instead of just the easy thing, right, would just be take a dumpster and just throw it all away. But our homes, our garages, and our storage sheds are holding a lot of valuable things in there that if we can keep them in use, now we're not having to go and use raw materials and buy new things. We're able to just keep these high quality, durable items in use for as long as possible, So yeah, that's the kind of stuff I do, but everybody has different needs. So yeah. Yeah.
What's a good place, I have patients, and what's a good place for them to get used walkers, and what would you bring other than the senior center?
Well, yeah.
Can you restate that question?
Yeah, so the question is, where is a good place to find things that seniors and older adults need. Besides the senior center, to be able to find used items, I'm not sure of that. When I was working for this older lady, her family needed things like that, and they did buy new things. So then they found out about the senior center and started checking them out there. But I would think thrift stores, if you can take the time to do that, yeah. Maybe you have an idea. Were you going to answer that question?
Marion County maintains an email list called CRN, or Community Resource Network.
Okay, CRN is the Community Resource Network, and it's maintained by Marion County?
Yes, and it's basically a network of nonprofits, and you can either say, I have a wheelchair that somebody can use, or I need something. And it does cover the whole county.
Ah,
It does.
it covers
there's
the
some
county.
to it, but
So you can go into there and just say, I'm looking for this, or you can say, I have extra of that, kind of like a free cycle?
you have to subscribe.
You subscribe to it.
And then you can send and then you get emails as well.
Okay, and you can send emails and get emails through that. So what's it called again?
CRN stands for Community Resource Network.
So Community Resource Network, CRN, and it's operated through Marion County. So does that help you? Okay, I think that will help a lot of us.
Can you describe a little bit more about, like, say you needed 50-gallon barrels or something? Is it something like way open like that, or?
I don't think there's
Yeah.
any real restrictions other than you don't
So
get to
people
buy
just-
and sell things.
Okay,
It
so,
tends to be social service places that subscribe, so it tends to be, I need a bed, I need a wheelchair, I
okay,
need a refrigerator, because
Mhm.
these people are both working with people that are downsizing, but they're also working with homeless that are trying to get into housing. And if you get into housing, that's great, but where do you get the bed and the sofa and the refrigerator?
that's interesting. I've been thinking about that too. So it sounds like it's operated, a lot of social services use this website, and it sounds like they help homeless people get the stuff they need. Once they find actual housing, they get the stuff they need to fill the house. That can help them. Okay, well, thank you, and if you have more questions, we can take it to the end of the presentation. Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much for your time, you guys.
We have to be cautious about our bantering back and forth because we are recording this for posterity, and it won't show up over there. Okay? I'll tell you 5 and 10. Okay?
Well, thanks. I'm Jim Miller. My wife Debbie and I put this talk together. It involved a lot more with work on methane and not just carbon dioxide, but 15 minutes? Well, here we are. So I took an axe to it last night. I work for the county as an independent contractor, but I'm not talking to the county. I'm just myself here. We heard about the circular economy, but biology is circular also. Carbon dioxide and water make sugar using energy from sunlight. All living things get chemical energy by doing the opposite, breaking those compounds down. It's called the carbon cycle. And it's been going on, as long as plants have been in the ocean. Photosynthesis makes organic carbon that the plants and animals use. It breaks down when these die, and carbon dioxide is released. Some of it eventually becomes fossil fuels. People actually make it a linear biology, though. We take the carbon out of the ground and put it in the air. Large, large, large amounts of it. Methane's also added to the air. A lot of it that comes into the air is coming from mining, coal, petroleum, and natural gas, which is methane. Most of us have methane piped into our homes. So why are we jumping here? I'm going to tell you why life as we know it is completely dependent on greenhouse gases. Not what you wanted to hear, but they're really essential for civilization. If the Earth didn't have greenhouse gases, it would be a freezing cold rock. It's actually kind of pleasant. This is a place that doesn't have greenhouse gases. It's boiling hot in the sun. It's freezing cold otherwise. How does this happen? The Earth or the Moon absorbs energy coming from the sun, electromagnetic radiation, light, photons. But it also radiates some of that energy back. How much and what frequency of energy it radiates back is dependent on the temperature. The Earth radiates it back as infrared light, like the stuff you see with night vision goggles. This diagram talks about what's called the energy budget. It's very busy. We're just going to talk about the first two parts on the left-hand side of it. The yellow coming from the sun just represents the energy coming from the sun. In the moon, it would all strike the surface, but some of it gets deflected by clouds and such on Earth. The next area of red is that infrared radiation leaving the Earth. And in the moon, it would just keep on going. But here, in the next panel, there's something called greenhouse gases there, and it's putting the energy back on the Earth. We need that energy, because otherwise we'd be freezing cold. These greenhouse gases work because they absorb some of that infrared radiation and then keep it in the atmosphere. I'm going to ask Debbie to help show how some of this happens. Oh. We brought some carbon dioxide here. This is normally in the atmosphere, and it's just sort of twisting, going in random directions. But every once in a while, infrared radiation of the right energy pattern that fits the key hits it, and it just vibrates, and it just goes crazy. And all this time, it's jigging around, rotating as it's bouncing like crazy. And then eventually, it kicks out that energy, but it goes in a random direction. And then another molecule of greenhouse gas can absorb it. And instead of the energy just going up, it ends up being trapped in the atmosphere. And like a thick blanket or a thin one, the heavier the blanket, the more that gets trapped. This big yellow curve represents the energy that would be coming out in the infrared wavelengths from Earth or the moon. But a lot of it gets blocked by the greenhouse gases. And it's that blocking that keeps some of that energy in. And that difference between what comes in and what comes out is called the energy balance. And this graph talks about that change in that balance, that each year there's more and more heat that's being kept on the planet. And it comes from carbon dioxide and methane and a bunch of other gases as well. You can see that the Earth has gone up about 2 degrees Fahrenheit in the past 150 years. And if you subtract out stuff from volcanoes and solar variability and El Nino and whatever, you see what's left. And it's coming up from these greenhouse gases. Well, how does that relate to waste here? Well, a lot of the waste that we have is carbon-based. Food, paper, animal waste, plastics, whether it's from homes, whether it's from businesses. The stuff that's produced by living organisms we call biogenic. The stuff that's man-made, like the plastics, anthropogenic. And that's the bulk of this stuff. when it goes with biogenic material, if we compost it, a lot of that carbon is saved and used in that product as opposed to going up in gases. If we burn it at Covanta or some other incinerator, that carbon is available instantly. If we put it in a landfill, we get a mix of carbon and methane that eventually is about equal proportions. It takes time, though. Some of the methane can be captured, but some of it invariably is going to escape. So what do? The big thing is to work to reduce the amount of material, because burning and putting more carbon in the air instantly, putting it in a delayed fashion from landfills doesn't work when our carbon is really out of balance and creating all this extra heat in the atmosphere. What we really have to do is not put it there. We have to use a circular economy. We have to reduce our waste, and having programs like zero waste is a way to do that. Plastics, we probably should landfill those because the carbon then ends up back in the ground. I mean, it's plastic, not fossil fuel, but at least it's not in our atmosphere then. Food waste really needs to have its own separate waste stream. It really needs to go in our organics. It shouldn't be composted. I mean, it shouldn't be landfilled and it shouldn't be burned. Some people say that global warming isn't happening, but if you actually look at some of the big money, it says it's happening. The International Monetary Fund downgraded growth estimates because of climate change. An investment fund that manages about 7% of the wealth in all the stock markets in all the world is changing their pattern because of how companies invest. Microsoft says that in the next 30 years, they're going to do things that suck up all the carbon that they've ever put in the atmosphere. The Bank for International Settlements, which is the organization of central banks of all the countries, used all capital letters, bankers, all caps. We have a climate emergency. And they said the Central Bank of Australia is going to have to be prepared to buy all the coal mines so that the investors don't lose their money. They're taking it seriously. And I think you do too. But that's part of our job here, is to help spread and share that. Thank you. Questions? All right. Yes.
In terms of not burning our waste, is this to say that the incinerator that Marion County would currently use, is that being phased out? And then what happens in terms of siting new landfills?
Well, I really feel that in the long term, so the question is the incinerator in Covanta up in Brooks being phased out? And then if it is, what do we do in terms of landfills and other garbage disposal? Right now, Covanta is still operating. They have a bill in the House and the state legislature about renewable energy credits for that. And that may change how they operate, or if they operate, at least in theory. I think we need to move fast because, as you see, each year more and more watts of energy are being kept on the earth. We're getting hotter. My recommendation, if it were up to me, we'd do a crash program in zero waste and get that going yesterday. It's a political process. It ain't going to happen that fast. I would rather that we both get rid of landfills and not burn it, because that's just more carbon in the atmosphere. Yes, sir.
Have you come across information that's giving you a feeling of who would be the power players to to get this in front of our legislature, to get this out where the public realizes what we're facing?
I think that that there's many different ways for that to happen, and I think a large part of it is us. Us in this room and us in a writ larger. People like Greta Thunberg is, Times Person of the Year, and she has generated a lot of interest, but she's just one of millions of people doing this. And our legislatures respond to the voters. I mean, they respond to other things too, but by and large, it's the voters. They respond to people saying things. They get a lot of letters and phone calls, but they also realize that only 1 out of 100, 1 out of 1,000, 1 out of 10,000 people actually communicate with them. Just 5 extra people saying something actually means a lot to them. All right. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tricia Ferris, and I'm going to focus on the reuse portion of the cycle, the circle. First, a little bit about me and why I became a master recycler. Our family immigrated from Canada to Portland. I'm one of 5 sisters. We grew up on the southeast side of Portland. I got a great job. I got married. And then I moved to suburbia, a big suburb in Portland called West Lynn. They have big houses, they have big cars, they have big yards, they have lots of stuff there. And so living there for as many years as I did, it was always trying to keep up with the Joneses, let's get more stuff, let's get a bigger house, let's get more cars. So, while I was there, I was the typical sports mom. I had 2 boys, they were always in sports. I drove the big SUVs from work to school, to practice, to home, to games. I did that for many, many years. The kids grew up, they graduated, I got divorced, and then I realized, I don't need so much stuff anymore, I decided that I was going to sell the big house, I was going to move to the country. My dream home was be a nice little farmhouse and try to live a little more simply. And so I retired from my great career after 36 years, and I did just that. I moved to the country. And the reason why I became a master recycler was I noticed it when I was going into Marion County for permits for my old house. And I said, what a great thing to do. I could use this in several different ways. I could use it for my farmhouse, and I could also use it in my hobby. And my hobby is, in high school, when they used to have those types of things, I took woodshop. I took woodshop for 2 years, and I loved it. And so I thought this master recycling class would be perfect for me because, as you can see here from the sign, remodeling my old farmhouse, the master recycling class was great because it taught me what was and what was not recyclable, what to do with the materials that I couldn't recycle, saving old nails, hardware fixtures, and either for reuse or donation. I can't tell you how many buckets, 5-gallon buckets of nails I have, because that old farmhouse, it's taken me a few years pulling down one board at a time and denailing it. But the whole old house was filled with this beautiful old shiplap, back in the day. And so the interior, the sides, the ceiling, the floors, everywhere, inside and outside. So I am preserving all of that. I am saving as much as I can to reuse it or to, share it with somebody else. And as far as my hobby, the master recycling class was great because it got me to understand the industry, get to know what's going on in the community, and find people like yourself. To have that certificate because, I'd love to be an entrepreneur and maybe sell some of the things that I do. But I figured that master recycling certificate would be a nice thing to have. Learn what others are doing, know where to get materials if needed, lots of excess wood scraps. Oh my God, I have so much old wood and things that the couple that I bought the house from, they saved everything. They had lived there for 40 years. And so I have pictures of some of the things that we're going to see. And I love to create objects using excess material, or I love to create things out of what people have thrown away. So I reuse, and that's why I think a lot of us are here today. Here are some of the pictures, and the rest of the presentation is going to be on some of the things that I have done and or reused. The top picture is part of the old farmhouse where I'm pulling down the shiplap. If you notice, is there a little, yeah. You notice this wall here, it's plastered with 1945 newspapers. It was amazing to me just to sit there and read them all. Dick Tracy comics, the full page. There were articles from June 7th, 1945. I mean, it was amazing. And so that wall stayed up the longest because I didn't want to take it down. But I did eventually, and so I've got it all stacked nice and neat so that if I want to recreate or create something with all of that old history, I can certainly do that. On the bottom, pictures. Of course, the old farmhouse came with a barn. And so I reused a lot of the shiplap, and I redid one of the big rooms in the barn. That's my workshop right here, right here. I do a lot of stuff. It's not that clean anymore. So it's very busy. Here's some of the wood that I have stockpiled. Again, I like to reuse it all. The elderly lady that I bought the house from, she comes to visit me from time to time, and she's just tickled to death that I am saving and reusing as much wood and as much of what they've stored for all these years. So, here's some of the things that I like to do with my reusing of different pieces. This top piece here, it's a potting bench I made for my sister. It's made out of a couple old doors, and it's made out of some deck planking that we built and then tore apart again for my mom's house. So a great way to reuse things without having to throw them in the landfill. So the picture frames I made out of the leftover pieces of shiplap and or the broken pieces that I got off of the wall. I think I have about 4,000 square feet or linear feet of the shiplap that I want to put back in the house once I'm done redoing it, but at this point I'm still pulling nails out. I made a nice, easy little chalkboard there out of an old window. I reused an old symbol and turned it into a clock. One of my sisters lives in Alaska, and they lost their house a year or so ago, and they had this wonderful music room. And so I made this gift for her for Christmas to start their music room up again. My sisters are all very competitive, and they started a couple years, maybe 15, 20 years ago, instead of buying stuff for us for the holidays, let's do something a little more practical. Let's make something, Let's all just make handmade gifts one year or for Christmas. And then it started this tradition that we continually do today. Other things that I like to do in the wintertime is I like to sew. So I make cosmetic bags out of old scrap fabrics, old jeans, old clothes. I cut it up, put the patterns together. This bulletin board here, I made out of an old oak window that I donated to the Salem Harley shop, so it's up there now. The ladies of Harley have adorned it, so you can go in and check it out. So it looks a little different. This was a handmade gift again. I redid an old purse. I put an all new lining. This right here is, I know some of you guys know what this is. It's an old, the old shaver kits, the hardcover. That's what that was. The inside was trashed. It was rusty. So I made it match the purse. This hairpin, I pulled out of the wall of my house. You know, I always look for gems whenever I take a wall out to see what kind of fun things I can find. But I made of these nice gifts, but I'm reusing things instead of buying new stuff. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time, but you know, when you give a gift that you've put some time into, it just has that much more meaning. Here's more things I have done. I made all my sisters little trees out of broken jewelry and used picture frames, some steampunk, you know, something for my niece when she was getting married. And then bra art. Has anyone heard about bra art? Well, every year, the breast cancer awareness, in certain locations and in certain communities, they have bra art to where you create bra art, you donate it, it gets auctioned off, and the money goes to the local chapter of the breast cancer awareness. And so my sisters are all very competitive. Trisha, you got to do this, you got to do this. And I thought, okay, fine. This one time in particular, when I joined in with them, this piece here, I happened to be cleaning up one of the steep banks in my yard, and so I challenged myself, and I pulled all the junk that I pulled out of that hillside is what I made this piece of art out of. And so they laughed when I said, here you go, here's my bra art, and it's got chicken wire and rusty metal in it. But, you know, it's all fun, and it's all creative, and it's reusing, so. For the holidays, these are some of the new slides for those that have seen this presentation before. You know, when I'm working in the house, I step on a chair once in a while. This one poor old chair kind of broke, so I took it apart, and I took the spindles from the chair, and I made little ornaments out of them, and I gave those for Christmas. The little trees down on the bottom, those are actually the scraps from the picture frames that I made. So, and the picture frames are scraps from the shiplap that I used. So I'm reusing and then reusing to try to get as much out of it as I can. Here's a couple pieces, you know, that I absolutely adore. This piece of here, this is old paneling that I've actually drugged from 2 or 3 other different houses. And I found it. It was in some shed somewhere because I was creating these pieces, the vinyl. I just, for some reason, I love the color, I love the texture, and just the, you know, the shape of that old vinyl. And it actually came off the floor of my old house. My sister saw it, she loved it. So I made her a tile. And while I was searching for a piece of wood to seal the back, I stumbled onto this, and it's like, oh my God, I can't paint over that. So I cut it up and I framed them all. So, but they look very nice. And then there's function, you know. I like to make art, but there's also things you can do, reuse any kind of material. This particular picture, there's a story behind everything in this picture, but I know I'm short of time. But the main thing I wanted to show you is here, out of just some old 2x4s and a piece of old tin and some wood, you can make raised beds. You can make things for your yard. I know not everyone has time like I do because I am retired and things, and many of you may have big jobs and stuff. But I just want to say that after all of the class that I've gone through, and after, you know, seeing the presentations and going through the Master Recycling class, I learned so much. And I think that we all need to share all about the big picture and encourage others to reduce, reuse, and recycle. Thank you. Any questions? Yes?
Where did you find the concrete core?
The concrete cores, oh, very interesting. They were there, part of them were there, and I actually stumbled across a garage sale that had a whole bunch of them for sale, and I waited until they had their half-off day, and I went back and I said, can I please have these so I could finish my wall, because I rebuilt that wall using those round things. I mean, you don't see them very often, you're right. So, any other questions? All right, thank you, everybody.
Want me to take this
Do you have a presentation?
3 different people presenting, 4 different people, presenting a variety of approaches. This one is going to have a lot more content and just focused, and basically, and then I have a little relief at the end before we get into question and answer. So it's called an ethical guide. Everything is connected, an ethical guide for master recyclers. So basically, it invites us to reflect on how we use resources and how we can use them better. So, food is essential. I take it there's not going to be a whole lot of discussion about that. Pretty straightforward. So we need it every day to survive and to thrive. We structure our days around food, we socialize around food, we celebrate with food. So this talk invites us to expand our personal ecological ethic, beginning with our daily food use. It's very practical. Then I'll briefly describe a remarkable document that provides a global basis for all of our ecological actions. What it does is it talks about these topics and many other topics from one unified perspective. So thank you, Alan, for this opportunity to present this talk. Okay, Alan informed me of a fascinating program called Project Drawdown. So it's composed of world-class scientists and policymakers who identified over 80 different ways to reduce human-caused climate change. 2 of the top 5 involve food. Number 3, reduced food waste, and number 4, eating a plant-rich diet. So at our next meal, we can reduce our food waste. And this talk invites us at the end to make a pledge. And give you, Alan will pass this on to you, but an opportunity to reflect on how do we use food, how do we waste food, and how can we waste less of it. Okay, so recently I gave my talks on, Master Recycler talks on reducing food waste, and I did it from 5th graders all the way up to graduate school students. And basically I emphasized this one statement, then I expanded on it. Food is our most moral resource. So every resource has moral or ethical aspects. More than any other resource, we need food. And therefore, food is our most moral resource. Even 5th graders, 10 to 11 years old, could articulate why it's not ethical to throw out food. So let's consider a few statements here from this document I'll be talking about. It's called On Care for Our Common Home. Have anybody heard of that document? Good. Opens some new territory here. I think you'll find this a very, very compelling document. Okay. This is an image of what On Care for Our Common Home talks of. This is an image of the Garden of Eden. Okay, so it gives you something to reflect on here. So in this document, a couple of statements I'll read and comment on. Number 1, environmental education should facilitate making the leap towards the transcendent, which gives ecological ethics its deepest meaning. So as master recyclers, we are in ongoing environmental education. And yes, the transcendent does give meaning to our ecological ethics, why we choose to do what we choose to do. Another quote, we are always capable of going out of ourselves toward the other, to the moral imperative of assessing the impact of our everyday actions and personal decisions on the world around us to bring about significant changes in society. So we can form our moral character and thereby develop our moral society, how we live in society. This is something which is talked about in terms of businesses and how businesses count what is profit. Businesses profit by calculating and paying only a fraction of the costs involved. Yet, when the economic and social costs of using up shared environmental resources are fully carried by those who incur them, not by other peoples or future generations, only then can they be considered ethical. Okay. This document, called On Care for Our Common Home, Laudato Si', was written in 2015 by Pope Francis. It has since spawned articles, books, national, international, intercontinental conferences. So it has really made a very significant impact. It's very readable. And I assure you, anybody who's into master recycling will be able to read this as a global understanding of the work we do as master recyclers and how we live our ecological ethic. So a key statement: everything is connected. So I'll just read along here. We can see from paragraph 22, these problems, pollution and waste, are closely linked to a throwaway culture, which affects the excluded as quickly as it reduces things to rubbish. We have not yet managed to adopt a circular model of production, talking about Kate's talk, capable of preserving resources for present and future generations. This is one way of counteracting the throwaway culture that affects the entire planet. As master recyclers, we can stand behind a statement like this. We stand against the throwaway culture and live in a circular culture, circular economy. From paragraph 50. This is the food waste reduction element that I've been emphasizing in my talks locally. We know that approximately a third of all food produced is discarded, and whenever food is thrown out, it is as if it were stolen from the table of the poor. Even in our county and state, where we pride ourselves on being very green. If you saw the chart that was shown recently by Jim, that the number one waste item in residential garbage, 24%, the number one waste item in commercial garbage at 29% is food waste. The number one elements. So yes, we can change our ecological ethic at our next meal, when we choose to not throw things out and just use what we need. And here's the paragraph that has the key to this talk. Everything is connected. Paragraph 91. A deep sense of communion with the rest of nature cannot be real if our hearts lack tenderness, compassion, and concern for our fellow human beings. Everything is connected. Concern for the environment needs to be joined to a sincere love for our fellow human beings and an unwavering commitment to resolving the problems of society. I contend that's one of the reasons we're here, to challenge our society and help our society resolve problems, especially in the way we waste things. And then paragraph 139. When we speak of the environment, what we really mean is a relationship existing between nature and the society which lives in it. We are not faced with two separate crises, one environmental and the other social, but rather with one complex crisis, which is both social and environmental. Strategies for a solution demand an integrated approach called integral ecology to combating poverty and at the same time protecting nature. This is a global vision. So when the Pope wrote this, and of course he did it with hundreds of advisors, scientists, social scientists, many, many different people helped him to write this. But he's saying that when we bring together the social side of the picture and the environmental side of the picture, that's when we're living in terms of care for our common home, is it needs to include both social and ecological aspects. So usually popes write documents to change the Catholic Church, but this one is an invitation to all people of goodwill. As I said, it brings together a global understanding of the ecological problems, the social problems that we have, viewed from a common viewpoint, and that is on care for our common home. We live on the earth. That's our home, and that's the home that we're trying to preserve. And now, I offer an opportunity of a pledge, which Alan is going to send out by email to everyone. It just seemed better if we could all read it together. Okay. So I encourage you to consider this because I've made it myself. In fact, I made it in front of my religious superior, right? So he knew what was going on, why I've really cut down my meat usage, for example. So, a pledge for master recyclers, and this develops on the Marion County Pledge for Food Waste Reduction. As a master recycler, I want to give other people an excellent example of moral ecological living. So beginning today and continuing for a week or longer, I will aim to reduce my food waste sustainably for the future. And then beginning this week and continuing for a month, I will try to eat, or if I already do so, will continue to eat a plant-rich diet in order to live sustainably for the future. To show my commitment to this pledge, I will share with someone that I trust that I made this pledge. One of the benefits of making a pledge like this is it gives us a clear direction. Every meal that we eat, we can be aware of our most basic resource use, and that is food. So then, food is our most moral resource. Our food use guides our entire ecological ethic. And believers can add to this because Jesus in the Eucharist comes to us as food. Little reflective thoughts here before we move on. I saw that a couple years ago. I thought that was several months of time-lapse photography, just putting into changing in the Canadian Rockies. It just seemed like a good reflective move. Okay, any comments or questions about this?
Amen, brother.
Amen. Okay, let me ask you a question. Amen, why? Yeah. Amen, why?
Oh, why? Oh, because it is something that, is we need to do. When you look at the word economy and ecology and even ecumenical, it is rooted in the Greek word
Oikos,
oikos,
which means house, yeah.
which means home.
I'm home, yeah. Of course.
So it is, it is something that we've lost
That's
as
it.
a people.
So, and this document on care for our common home is named that for a reason. It is about the oikos, about the home. And it's not just any home, it's our home. It's the home in which we live. Any other comments or questions? Please. Oh, I will. I'll play it again. Yeah, but let me do that. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. Okay, please.
Is there anything going on at the Abbey that's been changing, that you're working on or you're helping to change as far as the food waste?
Yes, actually, that's we just got a new and very talented monk who's coordinating between the monastery and the kitchen. I will be very clear, I don't envy his job. But he's working on reducing food waste. Some of it's just very practical. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do is to talk to the community and saying, the simplest way to work toward changing our environmental ethic is by being aware of the most basic resource that we use, and that is food. Yeah, so we're working in that direction.
Are you Earthright certified yet?
That's actually something that I put down as a goal for my work. I work in the maintenance department, maintain our warehouse. And so one of the things that we're aiming toward is just exactly that, achieving Earthwise certification. Thank you for asking that question. Okay. Then I have a question for you. Oh, go ahead, please.
Just a suggestion, one of the easiest ways to not have leftovers is to have a lot of tortillas on hand and turn them into burritos.
There we go. Yeah, exactly. There's very many practical ways we can do it. Yeah, so part of it is just basically thinking through the process. Like when I was explaining from 5th graders to graduate school students, I said, when we're planning our own meals, it's a matter of saying, do I really need this? And then how can I use it and map it out during the course of the week? Very practical. Thank you for that. Okay. So a question for you. that pledge that I offered, does that sound like something that would help you and help each of us to live our ecological ethic? Very good. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have a couple of minutes. Is there any other questions that have bubbled up that you'd like to ask any of the speakers that we've had up here? Kate talked about the circular economy. Jim and Debbie talked about, because now Debbie can answer, about the greenhouse gases and looking at landfills and all that connection, biology and physics and whatnot. And then Tricia Ferris talked about reuse and repurposing. And then Father C over here talked about this. Any other questions, last questions? Yes, no? Yes, ma'am.
So, I think that people who take these classes are pretty well informed, but what about the people who are just like throwing everything they own in their blue recycle bins? I mean, what can we do about that?
Okay, the question was, what do we do about, I mean, we're all fairly well informed about the waste system, but what about the folks that are out there, this common person that has not gone through the Master Recycler program? How do we clue them in? How do we get them to do the right thing? Suggestions? Mary Alice?
I'll tell you what I do, because I have 24 that I have to deal with on a regular basis.
You have 24.
I have 24 units that I deal with on a regular basis.
24 units, apartment units. Okay.
And then I have 6 blue buckets, and someone will alert me that somebody's just been carrying plastic bags out or something. When I find something in there, I make sure everybody has one of the flyers, the little ones that we pass out, that they can, the little bookmark things, that they can put on their refrigerator if they will. And then I send an email out to all 24 of my units and explain to them what needs to happen, why it needs to happen. Someone cut off the bottom of a metal ladder and stuck it in the bucket. And, I had to go through all of the information as to no, that would go to the transfer station or your trash can. It does not get recycled. So I try on a weekly basis, if you will, to give them updates, and they've done a lot better because of that.
Okay, so the gist of all that was that she went back, notified the folks there in the apartment building of the various infractions and where it could go. That was a very brutal summary, but that was for CCTV. Yeah. Good job. Grab my glasses here. Again, I would like to thank everybody, and I have my notes somewhere, but that's okay. There it is. Okay. My notes are, okay, thank speakers and attendees and do the raffle. Easy. I think these guys all spend a lot of time thinking about this stuff and reworking it, and I know all of them spend a lot of time just tweaking these presentations. Can we give them one more really good round of applause?